Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. I'm going to actually say misadventure, but it wasn't mine, so everything's okay. So I get this phone call from a friend of mine, and he had I'm not sure where the deal came from, Craigslist or Marketplace or wherever, but he bought this quad, an all-terrain vehicle that he's been after for quite a while. It's a sport model, and it happened to be like in real minty condition. Had a unique paint job on it, and I mean, just everything he's been after. The only thing wrong with it is that the clutch is a bit stiff. So he figures, hey, I'll smash a clutch into it for what I'm going to have into it for a real minty, fresh-looking all-terrain vehicle. I'm a million miles ahead. I got a deal here. So I'm not quite sure why he started to look for the VIN, if he had to look at the VIN to make sure he had the exact year to get parts for it, or if he was just curious, or if he was just cleaning the bike up and he happened to notice that it has a scratched VIN number. Well, depending where you live, that could be quite a problem. So here in New York, if you go to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle website, it is against the law to possess a motor vehicle or any part of a motor vehicle that has a VIN identification number that is destroyed, altered, defaced, concealed, remove. Law enforcement will seize, confiscate, and sell your all-terrain vehicle at auction according to that. So let's say you're unlucky enough to have this happen to you. What does it mean? Well, if it's a expensive all-terrain vehicle, one that you've paid real money for, one that you hope to register and use, you kind of have a big problem. Here in New York and a bunch of other states, if you get kind of a pencil marking of the motor vehicle, I'm not sure they take a photo. I think they kind of want an imprint of the VIN number, stamping. Anyway, if you get that, you could kind of register the all-terrain vehicle, get insurance for it, and ride it on trails. If you don't have a VIN, you can't get that impression. You might want to be clever and get an impression off of another one, but once again, if you're caught, what's going to happen to you? Nothing good. I've talked about this before, and whatever website I went to before said that it was not illegal to own such a vehicle here in New York. It said you can't transfer, give it away, or do anything like that with it, so you're kind of stuck scrapping it. According to the DMV that I just looked at, which I'm going to assume is proper law, you really got a problem now. If you get caught with it, you're going to have trouble. The cops are going to take it. Now, as I look at them, once again, if you're buying a rat like this, when they're this old and this beat, they're really kind of a disposable all-terrain vehicle. Not that you want enforcement taking it away from you and busting it up or anything, but you know, you're riding it around on your lawn, there's not too much of an issue. And if they do take it, it's not a big loss. If you paid real money for it and you could get back your real money in real time, you might want to do that. And before you buy an all-terrain vehicle, you might want to ask the Google and a couple of websites and all. Perhaps go to the manufacturer's website and find out where the VIN number is, and you want to make sure that's on there. You want to get paperwork wherever possible. You want to get at least a handwritten receipt with the VIN number on it, so that should you want to sell the thing or should you want to ride it off your property or get out in the real world with it, that you're not going to have problems. Let's go a little further with this. Let's pretend for a second this machine is a little better looking than it is. The last thing you want is a jacked ignition switch like this, or a removed ignition switch. That would have a tendency to trigger enforcement into thinking, what's the story on this machine? The ignition switch is jacked. Is it stolen? Then they're going to start sniffing around for the VIN. Common places, you know, front bar here, one of the back uprights, sometimes here, sometimes along some of the front uprights. Some of them put them down along the frame here. So look around, make sure you're going to buy a VIN. Buy a machine with a VIN before you get it, and do yourself a favor. Go through the trouble of getting a receipt, right? The last thing you need is this whole thing come ratcheting back. Should you own machines that do not have VINs on them, you know, keep them. Don't take them out on trails. Don't take them out there. Don't be riding them all over the place where you might get possibly tagged. Depending where you live, the enforcement deals with them differently. Down on Long Island, I was visiting a family member, and we drove by a gas station with wreckers, and they literally had one of the big dumpsters, I think it's a 40-yard dumpster, chock full of all-terrain vehicles. When enforcement catches somebody on an all-terrain vehicle they don't belong on, or they're riding it where they shouldn't be riding it, or, you know, they found it someplace it shouldn't have been, whatever the story behind it is, they just pick them up and drop them in a dumpster. When the dumpster's full, it gets hauled away, and they crush them. I gotta tell you, I wish I could spend about an hour with each one. I'm sure I could get enough parts off of it to make a living. I mean, it's a shame to just crush them like that, but that's what they do. They do not auction them off. They don't sell them. They crush them. They want them gone. Some of you might have seen the videos of kids kind of putting together their own little posse, and them running through the streets of some of the cities down south, Yonkers, you know, down in Queens, borough, or whatever, you know, and you see them running around on the streets, and then the cops start to chase them, and they go down narrow alleys and pull all kinds of stunts, and typically all or most of them get away. Every once in a while, for some of the newer riders, younger riders, unluckier riders, they crash or get cornered, and then they lose their machine. Once again, into the dumpster, and silver bracelets for them. Hopefully, they just deal with the pain of losing the machine, and they don't get to go into the can. Kind of ugly. Yeah, the lack of a VIN number, that's a real cautionary tale. Quite honestly, I'm not as careful as I should be with that kind of stuff, though I like to buy my stuff when it reaches the parts category. He ran into a secondary problem with his. His machine starts right up, runs beautifully, goes through all the gears, but the clutch is very, very stiff. It happens to have a hand clutch on it. And this is from a Chinese machine. Typically, on the better machines, this bearing, they have roller bearings on it, not this bushing. And what happens is, obviously this is the crank, this is a single speed, so the crank is driving a centrifugal clutch. The centrifugal clutch is bolted on here, And on the outside of the centrifugal clutch, so to speak, is that basket. So that as you give this thing gas, right, the shoes fly out, the basket's on the outside, grabs onto that, and it starts to turn, slides on this bearing when you're idling, right? But anyway, starts to turn. The turning on that thing drives a gear through reduction, and eventually it gets out to the back sprocket. In his case, the roller bearing here was destroyed. It got completely destroyed. I mean, bits of roller bearing throughout the engine. To really fix that correctly, one should really pull the engine apart and get rid of all that extra metal. In his case, I'm not quite sure he was willing to split the case and so forth, so you can put it back together again. But now you got to hope none of those bits of metal get to any place important and do any damage to your engine. And once again, cautionary note, look over whatever you're buying, especially if you're paying real money for it. If you're moving from the $500 I'm buying this for parts, and hopefully it runs and I could get a few laughs out of it, enjoy it till end of life, and then, it's parts once again. If you're buying a machine that you want to keep and love, and in this case he kind of was, because it was a dream machine that was really in pretty minty shape, right? When your bearing spills its guts throughout the motor, it could lead to premature motor failure, and quite honestly, it can lead to catastrophic motor failure, depending, once again, what it binds up. If it takes out your oil pump, if it jumps your timing chain, and you're whizzing along pretty good, you can hear a few bangs, and then your engine's quite done. So I wanted to share this cautionary tale with y'all. One of the problems with the quad he bought, he could have figured out in advance, right? He could have figured out there was no VIN number. The second problem with the quad, and I should be using the word needle bearing, right? His needle bearing went bad and shed metal through the thing. That's much harder to see, but just cautionary, if your machine has a manual clutch and it's very hard to pull the handle in, remember, things got to be able to slide on this shaft. And if it's to the point where your needle bearings and all that are kind of messed up, it makes it hard for that to work. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hot as the dickens. I'm trying to do some cleanup work. I hope to be wrenching on some machines pretty soon. I have a couple of more machines to tell you about. I have a Polaris Phoenix, and I have a Suzuki, what are they known as, Quad Runner 250 4x4s, two machines I recently bought. So I need to discuss those with you guys too. So there's plenty of new videos coming. I just need to get out of the heat, and I need to get cleaned up a little bit. I'm to the point where my tools are so stirred around I can't seem to find anything. Welcome to my world. Anyway, I need everyone to get out there, get your feet down, get your head up, get out there and have plenty of good times, plenty of fun. If it's hot like it is where I am, get out in the morning and have fun before it gets too warm. I want to thank everybody for watching, commenting, subscribing. Remember, get out there and have a few laughs. You don't know how much time you're going to get. So you don't pay extra if you get extra laughs during that short amount of time. Bye now.